Hello, everybody. My name is Mr. Steffler, and I'm here in room 111 at Clintondale Middle School. We're here to talk about Chapter 21. Chapter 21 has been pretty much the lead up to the Civil War, talked about how our nation was divided, talked about all the different things that happened so that a Civil War was possible, because the Civil War was a pretty bad thing, and it took a lot of different things to happen for this Civil War to go on. But I think the first place to start when talking about the lead up to the Civil War is in the 1820s when they passed the Missouri Compromise. Missouri wants to enter the nation as a slave state, as you know, and that would have upset the balance of slave states and free states in the Congress. So what they did was they had Missouri join as a slave state, and they had Maine join as a free state. But also in this, it said that slavery was not going to extend into most of the new territories that the United States had acquired in the Louisiana Purchase. So this was a major aspect of the Missouri Compromise, and it helped keep the balance of slave states and free states, and it also helped quiet down the argument over slavery. But the argument over slavery may have quieted down in Congress because of the gag rule, but because of the Second Great Awakening, a lot of people thought it was like their duty as a human being to help free the slaves, and these people, this abolition movement really started during that Second Great Awakening that I taught you about, I think back in chapter 18. By 1850, things had really changed a lot. We had war with Mexico, and we had acquired a lot of new lands. And obviously, the southern states wanted to change some of those lands into slave states, i.e., Texas. How they wanted Texas to be a slave state. They also wanted at least half of California to be a slave state. But California applied for statehood as a free state, and that is why they had to make the Compromise of 1850. And in the Compromise of 1850, they passed a very new, strict fugitive slave law. And this was very controversial in the North because it pretty much made everybody a slave catcher, and it made anybody who is even a free African American in the North susceptible to being captured and put back into slavery. The next major thing that happened was in 1854, they passed the Kansas Nebraska Act, which basically said that in Kansas and Nebraska, the new settlers that come there will vote to see whether it's a slave state or a free state. Well, what this did was it just led to bloodshed because pro-slavery people and anti-slavery people, including John Brown, went to Kansas to kind of fight it out on the frontier. And so a lot of people think that the Civil War really started in Bleeding, Kansas in 1857. Also going on at this time was the Dred Scott case. And you know that Dred Scott was a slave that was taken to Wisconsin, which didn't allow slavery, and he sued for his freedom. And when they ruled against Dred Scott, what they really did was rule that that slavery was allowed in the territories, and they really made Northerners very, very angry by this. Things are getting closer and closer to the Civil War, which you know starts in 1861. We had John Brown's raid of Harper's Ferry, where he tried to take the guns and distribute those guns to slaves, and that was going to be a widespread slave rebellion, except it was stopped. So it wasn't a widespread slave rebellion. John Brown was captured, tried for treason, and hung by the state of Virginia, and this made him a hero amongst abolitionists. You know, we have the election of 1860, which almost all of you voted in our tournament, as you see behind me, as the most important thing that happened, because this brings Abraham Lincoln to be the president, and then Abraham Lincoln, when he becomes president, doesn't really do anything at all, except South Carolina and 6 other states decide to secede, which means quit. And the election of 1860 just really shows how deeply divided the nation was over slavery. Shortly after Lincoln becomes president, South Carolina decides to aim and fire its cannons at Fort Sumter, and this really triggers the Civil War. The firing on Fort Sumter is normally thought of as the first shots of the Civil War. Ironically, this battle at Fort Sumter, nobody got killed in. So these are the main points that are on your Chapter 21 test. I expect you to watch this video, to pause it, to compare it to the things in your workbook. You've worked very hard on this chapter. You should do very well on the test. If you're in Washington, D.C., and you're watching this, you will take your test on Tuesday, not on Monday. You'll have a day to prepare. And other than that, God bless you and God bless America.